Hello and welcome to Ask the Expert, a daily series from 8:30 to 9 to help small businesses. Ask any questions in the comments or hashtag QBATE on Twitter. If you need any more advice, join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. QuickBooks also have a dedicated COVID-19 information site. Just go to the QuickBooks website, scroll down a little bit, and click on the big Learn More button under the header Support for you and your business during COVID-19. So now we've got that intro out of the way. It's an absolute pleasure to be here today. So I'm Carl Reeder, and I've joined a couple of these Q&As before, and I'm really looking forward to getting stuck into your questions today that are sent on the comments, through DMs, and so on and so forth. But first, let me just share a little bit about myself and perhaps why I'm sat here today. So I've come through the ranks as effectively the world's worst accountant, and I say that with a bit of a smile on my face because I didn't really realise what I wanted to do when I was younger. I dropped out of school at the age of 15. I started as a YTS hairdresser, really didn't go well, and fell into accountancy. But the amazing thing about the choice that was landed on my plate, certainly wasn't a deliberate choice, but the choice that was landed on my plate, the path that I was given, was that I had the opportunity to learn about loads of different businesses. I didn't enjoy adding up the numbers at all, to be honest. But what I really enjoyed was going out, meeting businesses and asking them, why do you do this? Why do you do that? So if we fast forward from when I started at the tender age of 16 through to about 2000, mid 2010s, so about 2014, 2015. By that point, I had spent 15 years speaking to businesses. I'd already bought out the business that I was involved in. I'd built it myself to a team of about 50. So it got to some size, and I had some experience of building a business myself. And I was also fortunate enough then to be afforded the opportunity to write about my experiences. So my first book, The Startup Coach, was based on my experiences of helping businesses start. So it was very much a workbook format, helping them go through the process of thinking about their personal position, their business position, creating their business plan, and then getting on with it. My second book was the Franchising Handbook. Now, I'd spent a lot of time in franchising. We'd come up with some magic for the franchising equation to add some true value between the franchisor and the franchisee. And through that time, I got to learn a lot about that relationship. So my second book, Franchising Handbook, was distilling that experience and the experience of my colleagues in the franchising world. I'm now very fortunate enough to have written a third book. So the book is called Boss It. It's due for release in October. So in the UK and the rest of the world, it's 3rd of October. In the USA, it's 27th of October. And in Boss It, I think there's a really timely message that regardless of whether you're starting a business or you're restarting a business after coronavirus, there's a really important message insofar as how you should go about observing what you're doing in your business, planning what you're doing, and making sure that you don't make any fundamental mistakes. And it's all very simple in my model. It's about dream, plan, do, review. Make sure that your dream is big enough to engage you, but not so big that it puts you off. That your plan is fit for purpose. But it's not the back of a fag packet, but it's also not a 1,000-page formal business plan that no one ever reads. You need to make sure that you take action and then review. Now, I mentioned that this was relevant for the post-COVID age as well. Because if you've already got a business and let's say you've had a downturn, you've maybe not shut your doors completely, but you've had a bit of a downturn due to coronavirus, you might be thinking, why on earth do I need to read a book? Why on earth do I need to think about restarting my business? Why on earth, who is this guy telling me that I need to restart and refresh and rebuild? Well, let me tell you now, the world will be very different post-coronavirus. And this isn't just restricted to applying the model after a crisis, actually, this model applies at any point in your business. So if let's say you do your strategic planning yearly, then do this yearly. If you do it quarterly, do it quarterly. The fact of the matter is that most businesses that do certainly do okay and get off the ground, they do the dreaming, they do the planning, they take action and they review. But those that don't go on to flourish going forwards never go back to the start to revisit their dream, to revisit their plan, to go back and do some more action and then to review again. So you need to make sure that you keep observing this cyclical process. And what better time than after a crisis to really revisit your business? I've seen some tremendous examples of how businesses have pivoted, and I've shared some of them on previous episodes. But I was having a conversation just before this one, and I would like to share, in fact, two examples of pivoting based on that conversation. So the conversation was with Cry, who's one of the guys at QuickBooks, and he'd unfortunately had some dental issues over lockdown. So he had a WhatsApp appointment with his dentist. Now, what a remarkable way to keep offering a service through lockdown. So that's great. But Kwai opened up. He's actually a martial artist by training, and I don't know if any of you guys will know. Some of you listening might know, and most of you probably won't know. But I've actually had quite a bit of involvement in the martial arts world as well, from a business perspective. And I know of martial arts schools who've been running outdoor classes quite literally in the car park of their centre. Now, for outdoor classes, they're limited. I believe it's 5 people plus instructor, all socially distanced, of course. They've actually taken their mats out of the centre and used the mats to put individual spacing areas for the students to be training on. And it's been fantastic. They've been able to maintain the personal contact as well as the video contact. So there's been some remarkable stories of businesses pivoting and keeping going rather than just ticking over. But when it comes back to the reality of running a business, even these businesses that have kept going in some way, shape, or form are going to have to restart, rebuild, and flourish. So they're going to have to look at, like, how do we get back to normal? How do we open up the doors and start getting the customers back in? How do we make them comfortable with the environment that they'll be dealt with in? How do we make sure that they're absolutely clear that we're using PPE and maintaining all the sanitary regulations, whilst not being over the top and perhaps frightening them? So there is going to have to be a new case of dream, plan, do, review. It might sound like I'm constantly going over the same old ground on this, but it is a very, very simple model that can help you look at what you need to do, help you work out where you want to go, break down the steps, and take action. So with that out of the way, I can see we've got some questions that have come in already. So I'm going to start tackling some of these questions. And the first one is from Frederica. So Frederica has sent this in via Facebook Messenger. So Frederica, thank you so much. And I guess this one has come from my comments about the Franchising Handbook. Why would I consider franchising instead of just growing my business like a traditional business? So Frederica, that's a really good question. And I think that I would actually support you in that the question has some level of validity. Because if you had unlimited time and unlimited money, and you had skill sets, or you was able to recruit skill sets, then yes, it's perfectly reasonable to ask, why wouldn't I want to grow my business organically or through acquisition? And we need to remember that franchising is one of many models for scaling. So when I look at scaling, I see that there's a few fundamental pillars of scaling that you need to have in place. You need to have your growth model, your funding model, your staffing model, your leadership model, and it needs to be underpinned by your vision. Now, when you look at the growth model, if we dive into that a bit deeper now, your growth model can consist of organic growth, which is just doing more of what you do. It can consist of acquisition, or it can consist of franchising. There's others like distributorships and licensing and so on, but very broadly, those are the models that you might want to consider. Franchising works really well when you've got a model that can be replicated by another person. And in fact, I'm going to bring in an example of a major high street brand. So Thornton's, when they franchised, they observed that their franchised locations actually had 10% more turnover than their company owned. And Clark's, the shoe stores, you might not be aware, but Clark's franchised some of their stores. And they noticed that the franchise stores were the ones that would tip into profitability simply because the store owner would stay open to make sure that they sell the shoes. They wouldn't just close the door at 5:30, even if there was a queue outside. So there is a very real difference between the motivations of an employee and a franchisee. But it can be uncomfortable as well, because franchisees can sometimes be a halfway house between an employee and a true entrepreneur. So why should a business consider franchising? And we're going to stick from the franchisor side on this question, because obviously from the franchisee side as well, there is the very valid argument, why should I consider buying a franchise? Why should a business consider franchising? So first of all, it allows you to develop into regions that you have no experience or contacts in. So franchising allows you to tap into the local contacts, the local knowledge of the franchisee. That's not so much of an issue when you're looking domestically. So if you are, let's say you're based in Manchester and you take on a franchisee in Liverpool, there's not really much you need to know about the nuances of the differences between the two regions. There will be differences, but as you grow, you might decide to franchise from England into Scotland. There are some differences in the way that businesses deal with each other. There's certainly differences in law. There's just cultural challenges which aren't immediately obvious. And then if we look at international franchising, not many brands have successfully gone from the UK to the US. And on the face of it, you might feel, well, the US is the home of franchising and they speak the same language. Why wouldn't it work? Actually, they're two very different business cultures. So it allows you to tap into that local knowledge, that local experience. It allows you to tap into the motivation of a business owner running your business rather than an employed manager. And it allows you to scale a bit more quickly if you haven't necessarily got the funding platform to be able to afford to acquire these businesses. Instead, you can start them up. Now, don't get me wrong, there's challenges as well, because you are dealing with other business owners, not employees. So you're not able to perhaps be as blunt with hiring or firing as you might be with an employee. You have to manage the fact that your culture and your service levels and so on are distilled between franchisor to franchisee to customer rather than directly from business to customer. So you need to try and understand that. You need to make sure that you've got a real grasp on your operations manual so that you can tighten up any holes in there. You need to make sure that your agreement is watertight. You need to make sure that you've also got a very robust culture, both of management and leadership from head office, but also culturally on the ground as well in your franchisees' locations, to make sure that they actually do what you want them to do in the way that you want them to do it. Because the worst thing that you can do is to sell a franchise. Let's imagine you're a coffee shop. Sell a franchise, and then for your franchisee to notice lots of construction workers are coming in, and for them to start selling tools as well as coffee. That will damage your brand. On the flip side, just remember that franchisees can bring in some input to head office as well. It's one of the most well-quoted stories, but the Big Mac came from a franchisee. So, Frederica, I hope that's answered your question. If there's any questions that you would like more information on, please visit the Facebook group. It's Boss It Small Business Community. So the next question is from Jamila. Now, Jamila has asked, last time I was on Ask the Expert, I mentioned a 3-step process: restart, rebuild, and flourish. I'm interested to know a little bit more about that, so I'm keen to try to apply that to my business. So The restart, rebuild, and flourish process is more about the mindset that you need to go through as the business owner to understand the seismic change that's happened within every business, whether you felt it yet or not. I know that even those businesses that felt like they continued to trade, they will have an impact down the line. And that impact is going to come about through a number of things. It's going to come about through the economic downturn that we're going to be going through. It's going to come about through the issues that are going to hit every single business. It's going to come about through the fact that supply chains are just damaged along the way. So you need to be thinking in your mind, first of all, about restart. And even as I said, even if you've been trading continually, what would you do to be able to kick your business off with a bang? And what are the kind of things you need to think about for the restart? So first thing that I would say is that you need to bear in mind that customer expectations have shifted over the last 10 to 20 years. We've all had our expectations shaped by the likes of Google and Amazon nowadays. And with the lockdown period, what's happened there is that those of us who maybe didn't use online shopping have started using it. Those of us who, perhaps would have always gone to the dentist as a first port of call, like I mentioned earlier, have now had virtual consultations. So we need to, first of all, consider whether there's any adaptations that we need to make to match customer expectations that have been building up over some time. We then need to make sure that we're matching customer expectations insofar as PPE and hygiene and so on. But then I think we need to look at customer desires as well. Over the last 10 years, again, customer desires have been gently shifting. We don't need more staff. We're looking for experiences and so on. But there will be a shift in customer desires post-COVID. I think that we've all come to value the little things in life, like going out for a coffee and, perhaps overhearing other conversations and the hustle and bustle of crowds, perhaps just people watching. This is the kind of stuff that we've missed. So we need to look at how we can embrace that within what we do. So the restart side of it is just an acknowledgement more than anything else that it's not going to be business as usual. It's going to be business in the new normal. As much as I hate that phrase, there will be a new normal. So that's the first bit. The second bit, the rebuild. And this is perhaps more relevant to those businesses that have completely closed their doors. We need to harness the 20, 30, 40, 50, however many years experience you've got. We need to harness that and put that into the rebuild phase. But we don't want to rely exclusively on that, because what worked 5, 10, 15, 20, 30, 40 years ago will not necessarily work now. But there will be certain things that will stand the test of time. The first one is your ability to get through the worst crisis that the economy has seen. We have, we need to give ourselves a pat on the back as a society. We have got through the worst economic crisis in living memory. And don't get me wrong, there has been some collateral damage from it, but most of us have got through remarkably well by embracing the spirit of entrepreneurialism. So that will never change. We can bring that spirit. We can bring the knowledge of how to deal with humans rather than to act as robots. We can bring in our interpersonal skills. We can bring in our sales skills, our marketing skills, and so on. But we need to make sure that we rebuild, being very mindful of the shifts that I touched on to begin with in the restart phase. And then flourishing is just the natural impact of making sure that you go through all of the processes. You keep following it step by step. You dream, you plan, you do review. You make sure that, as I said before, that your dream is fit for purpose, that your plan is fit for purpose, that you take action and you check what happened. You go back to the start, you revisit your dream, you revisit your plan. You don't need me to keep saying this. You just make sure that you stay on top of your business, including what I believe will be most important for businesses over the next couple of years, the review stage. What's worked, what hasn't worked, and then tweak and adjust where you need to. So the next question is from Kirsten via Twitter DM. So Kirsten has asked, hi, we're an independent streetwear clothes shop. we're thinking about doing more flash sales to ensure that we still get customers. What are your thoughts about this? So this is a really interesting one because certainly in the fashion industry to begin with, the challenge that has arisen through COVID, whilst online shopping on the face of it might seem like an opportunity, the challenge has been that, quite frankly, there's stock which will go out of date. And more to the point with streetwear, the pace of fashion is perhaps quicker than traditional seasons. It's not necessarily spring, summer, autumn, winter. The pace of launches and drops and so on could be bang, 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 week after week. So um, it, you're going to have to use a variety of strategies to make sure that you can rebuild your business successfully, but without damaging your business going forwards. So the first thing that I would say is that, yes, flash sales are going to be useful, but I'd be very careful not to do a flash sale on your crown jewels. There will be certain items that you just don't want to discount, and this is perhaps the perfect opportunity to consider what are your key product lines that you can continue churning out at a premium, and what items are perhaps more price sensitive. So, I don't know much about your business, whether you are white labeling your clothes, whether you've got your own brand or whether you're stocking other brands. If you're stocking other brands, you might find that certain brands you are in competition with every other seller, and others you've got some level of exclusivity on, and that would be a good indicator of which ones you can put a flash sale on. I would actually be looking at Instagram promotions. Instagram is certainly one of the places where you can build a bit of a buzz, and I've seen some streetwear brands successfully do tag a friend competitions, story competitions, and so on. The challenge with these is they might encourage a transaction, but they don't necessarily encourage loyalty. So you then need to look at mapping out your lead journey once you've captured the lead. So you want to look at capturing the lead in some way, whether they're buying from you or not, or whether they're just participating in a competition for either a free item or a chance to buy something or whatever. And then find a journey for them so that you can stay in constant contact with them, not just an email list. And this is where you need to be quite intelligent. And then this is where the use of things like Facebook remarketing and Google remarketing and so on can really help get your brand first and foremost in their mind. So, Kirsten, I hope that's helped in some way. I'm now going to come on to a question through Facebook Messenger from Ken. So, Ken, thank you. If you had £10,000 right now, what would you do with it? Wow. That is a really, really good question. So aside from, I don't know, going to the jewellers and buying a Rolex or whatever, what would I do if I had £10,000 right now? In truth, I putting on an average business hat on. And if I can paint a picture of an average business, let's say I had 5 employees and I've got through COVID, but I've taken on a COVID loan, taken grants. So if I had 10 grand right now, I would be putting it into a rainy day fund, in truth, because I believe that there are rainy days to come. I don't believe we're going to have a double-dip recession, but I think we're going to have cash squeezes. And I think that seasonality is going to be all over the place. I think we will have unemployment and there will be inflation. I would put it aside just for the moment until I can see where business is going. Now, if you've got sufficient cash reserves and putting it to one side isn't the answer that you were looking for, I would be personally looking at investing that money in some way to strengthen the systems of my business. So I tend to take an approach that you need to think of a business a bit like a bucket. And if the bucket is leaky, you fix the leaks first. And what COVID has done is it's opened up our eyes to the leaks in each and every one of our businesses. It's opened up the fact that actually our businesses aren't necessarily as watertight as we thought they were. And with the changes going on, there is undoubtedly in every business areas that can be patched up. So I'd look at patching up first. And that's where I'll be investing my money and my time to make sure that I've got my customer experience nailed on, I've got my operations nailed on, that I'm using automation where I can. Only then would I then look at lead conversion and lead generation. So yeah, really boring answer. I'd put it in the bank, or I'd work on the internals in my business. So Noha, thank you for your Twitter message. Noha's asked, what is my best advice on time management? I run my own business and there's so many things I want to do, but I feel like there's never enough hours in the day. So Noha, welcome to business ownership and self-employment, I'm afraid. Time management is one of the biggest challenges that all business owners have. And in fact, there's a quote that always brings a smile to my face, but the best thing about being self-employed is choosing which 18 hours per day you can work. And yeah, within that, there's actually some really strong messaging. First of all, we work 18 hours a day. When you're a business owner, you are always on. But on the flip side, there is the other angle to it, that you've got the control of choosing which 18 hours, which is the opposite to traditional employment, where you're told to clock in at 9 and finish at 5. So now that we know that there is, unfortunately, in business ownership, there's no such thing as work-life balance, how can you best manage the workload and the calls on your time that you've got? So I tend to refer to Stephen Covey and his time management matrix, which is looking at important versus not important, urgent versus not urgent, and making sure that you actually devote time. It increases your workload, but to working on the stuff that's important but not urgent. So this is stuff like working on the systems in your business. This is actually improving the way your business works, so that less urgent stuff crops up, less last minute panics crop up. So this will include working on things like systemizing your business. This will include things like bringing in new processes and training people and so on. So that's a good area to work on. The second thing is you need to be brutally honest with yourself and look at what tasks need you and what can be outsourced or what can be delegated to an employee. Now, a great book for this, I'll give another book recommendation, is The 4-Hour Work Week by a guy called Tim Ferriss. And he talks about an acronym called DEAL: Delegate, Eliminate, Automate, Liberate. And really what you want to be looking at here is the delegate, eliminate and automate. What can you just get rid of? What can you eliminate? What can you delegate? And there's a skill to delegation. There's a real skill to making sure that you can pass on a task or a process appropriately. And what can you automate? What can you use computer systems, digitalization and so on to take care of for you? Because I can guarantee that if you had somebody suitably qualified sat next to you, and you went through a list of what you're doing, 90% of that could be passed on to somebody else. The challenge here, Noha, is it will either be limitations within your mind about passing stuff on, limitations of your mind about eliminating stuff, or the fact that you perceive that you can't afford to take on somebody to do this stuff. And then that brings us to another question. You need to look at what you do, or what you should be doing. What is that worth to the business? And is it worth you spending time doing the administration or doing your bookkeeping or so on, rather than paying someone else to do it? Or could you actually be growing your business? What is the opportunity cost of not devoting your energy to the stuff that you bring to the table that's really special about you? So I'm just going to bring on the very last question. I'll answer this one quickly. So this is Marley from Facebook Messenger. Marley, thank you so much. With customer mindsets changing with how they shop, do you feel that setting up e-commerce is the way to go? Will this be an easy transition? So a very quick answer for this. Yes, you need to be online. No, it doesn't necessarily have to be e-commerce, and it might have to be a hybrid clicks and bricks approach. I'm more than happy to answer this in more detail in my Facebook group, Boss It, the small business community. So this has been an absolute pleasure today. I've really enjoyed answering these questions again. So if there's any questions, please get in touch with the QuickBooks support team on Facebook, or you can reach out to me on social media. You can find me very easily at Carl Reader. And as I say, the Facebook group is the hashtag Boss It Small Business Community. So Coming up on Ask the Expert tomorrow is Jenny Tsai, CEO and founder of Whereisma, a global pioneer in influencer enterprise software. Whereisma's platform enables global brands across numerous sectors, including luxury, beauty, and fashion, to foster reliable, highly successful relationships with key influencers. Tune in and ask a leading influencer marketing expert your burning questions. So, a reminder, if you need any more advice, join the official Intuit QuickBooks SMB community group on Facebook. Accountants and business experts are on hand 24/7. Thank you and stay safe.